Hvac,
Just
yeah.
decided her name is not that important.
That's why I keep saying that I'm gonna bring that home during the month so I can put that on my desk. at
I'm
work.
giving you attitude. And
Yeah.
that's justified.
That's what Rose does. She has it at home on her kitchen table.
Remember, I got sore fingers, so don't pick up.
Not as sore as Katie's knee and ankle. She's getting better on her crutches. We went to, not yet, they're supposed to call, but the doctor's like, it's baby fractures. There's nothing they're gonna do. It's just gotta heal. Well, like that doctor said, they'll know when you can stand on it. Your body will tell you when you can put weight on it.
We'll go easy on you.
She's got a lot more flexibility in her knee the last 2 days, so.
Yeah, I get that email.
But it's a
today from
sprained
Clint.
ankle.
He's like, yeah, I'm not gonna make it. I'm like, oh, really?
We went down to Mercy down there, right on Plainfield. Or not Plainfield, but Northland Drive.
Everything like
As soon
that.
as Jerry gets back.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
they wouldn't
Mr.
have got us in
Burlington's
that
two
night, I
people
don't think.
tonight.
I don't know, they could have, but
They will.
hey, don't forget that.
Matt's coming. I saw. Clint's not here tonight.
Ah, you get to be it, eh?
Yeah.
Ooh, boy, it's all on you tonight then.
Well, since how you're the chair, you can say if we run past 8:30, everybody gets fined $1.
Hey, we just gotta keep, hey, it's 7:01, so.
Yeah.
Oops, he said.
Jerry, you're holding us up here.
All right, it is 7:01. I think we should call this meeting to order. The first thing would be hello. The Pledge of Allegiance. Is that correct?
That's correct. Okay.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen.
Okay. Right off your agenda, John.
Thank you all for joining us tonight. For our October 5th meeting. Roll call. Mr. Hall,
Here.
Ms. Hamel,
Here.
Mr. Hogg.
Oh, here.
Hogue.
Don't worry about it.
Sorry.
Everybody gets it wrong.
Mr. Merlington.
Here.
Mr. McGrath. Here. I am here. And Mr. Conley is not with us tonight. He is a little under the weather. We have, what's that?
Would you like to call him excused or would you like to take a vote on the matter?
I make a motion to excuse Mr. Conley this evening.
I'll second that.
Okay. He is excused. Oh, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion passes. We will excuse Mr. Conley for tonight. We also have Mr. Womack, our city manager, Ms. Johnson, and
Mr. Johnson.
yes,
Johnson.
I'm looking at you because I'm like, for one more night, we get you.
Make it last, you know.
Take it all in.
City planner,
No.
Mr. Johnson is here. So looking over our minutes from last meeting, does anybody see anything that was not correct, or do we have a motion to accept those?
I'd make a motion to accept those.
Support. Okay. So,
You can call for any discussion or you can call for a vote.
thank you. Any discussion, or shall we take a vote on it? Okay, so all those who are okay with the meeting notes from last month, please signify with aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Okay. We have our agenda tonight. We need to approve our agenda tonight,
So move.
and I will second that.
Are there any modifications, deletions, corrections?
Nothing I'm seeing.
Okay. If there is no modifications or anything, we'll take a vote on that and approve that. So if you care to approve the agenda tonight, please signify with aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, the agenda is approved. And public comments? Anybody in the public, our lovely adoring public?
Yes, Rose Powell, Cedar Springs. Just wanted to make a comment about Red Flannel Day. It was wonderful. I don't know if everybody got to enjoy part of it. It wasn't perfect, but it was wonderful. And if you ever get a chance to volunteer for this event, it's rewarding, it's fun. It really puts your heart in a place where this festival is so important to this community, and help us keep it going. We always need more volunteers. We'll start kicking up the new Red Flannel Day about February. Everybody kind of goes in hibernation and clears their head. So anyway, I hope you all had a good time, because these guys worked their guts out getting this going. Meeting, work. So anyway, see you next year. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rose.
Sir, we do have two people who are online. Ms. Bevington, do you have a public comment you'd like to share?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Ms. Race, do you have a public comment?
I do not. Thank you.
If that is all the public comments, we will close that part. Any conflicts of interest or ex parte communications? Do what?
No.
Oh. Thought I did something wrong.
Nope, you're fine.
Nope.
Okay. I do not believe that we have any scheduled hearings tonight,
Not tonight.
and I believe we just move on to our old business. So the first thing we have is a motion to recommend to the city council to adopt the 2021 bylaw revisions as presented.
So you don't necessarily have to act on this. It's presented
Mhm.
in such a way as you can obviously discuss it.
Mhm.
One of the main things that we've talked about, we've done in the last several meetings is we've moved site plans and that type of stuff. The type of stuff that has people like Ms. Bevington appear, move those up front so we can discuss those and people don't have to wait around while we discuss fences. So that was the main change that was made. So I guess what I'm looking for is comments on any other proposed changes, any difficulties or concerns about what was proposed. I'm trying to bring it up right now, but my computer is probably moving as slowly as yours. So I guess from everybody having reviewed this before the meeting, do you guys have any comments about what has been proposed?
I thought it was fine lumping all the public hearing stuff all together.
Yeah, I don't remember
Was
seeing
my main
anything.
thing.
So I can walk you through the changes. There weren't that many if you want me to.
Mm. Cool. That would be nice just for the general sake of the public.
Okay. So section 2, subpart B, I changed the word during to prior to. December, because sometimes we want to address your next regular meeting schedule in October or November. That shouldn't cause any fuss. And then in the agenda, you'll see scheduled public hearings is immediately followed by review, discussion, approval, or recommendation of related public hearing material. It's very wordy. I'm sure I'll find some way to kind of reduce that. Old business has been converted to site plan reviews. New business is converted to other business. And otherwise it stays the same. I think that would accomplish the goals of what we're looking for.
Yep.
Then subpart J, this just reflects reality. It says the chairperson shall have the discretion to cancel or adjourn due to emergency, weather, et cetera, et cetera. I just added in city manager because really what happens is I call up the chair and say, what do you want to do? But I'm the one who generally has the phone numbers. I'm the one at City Hall. Section 5, I did add ex parte communication. And then subpart D there, some minor changes. Decisions should be based upon information that is obtained at a public meeting or upon information that is available to the public at large, which of course should reflect reality. And then I have a proposed amended date of October 5th, which is what today would be. So I guess it comes down to whether this board is comfortable with those changes. They feel like, you know, it accomplishes what you want to do. And whether somebody has a little less wordy of a way of saying, as I scroll up, review, discussion, approval, or recommendation of related public hearing materials.
I think all those things you said, I mean, those are everything we talked about to make these meetings move faster and get the public involved at the start. So I think it accomplishes what we want.
I believe so.
If you're thinking about recommending tonight, which, you know, that's up to you guys, I would at least ask you to leave open the option for me to change that language a little bit because it is very wordy. But I would keep the same kind of impetus of what we're planning on doing there. So I guess, Mr. Chair, however you'd like to proceed.
So discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Chair. What would it be heard if at the next meeting have Mr. Womack do the final draft and then we can look it all over and then it's done? What's one more month?
I
Go
I
ahead.
have a comment too, just about the section J about the emergency thing. I know that
Yeah.
before that there wasn't good management or whatever, there's not. Remember you guys were talking about that before my time.
Yeah,
So I think we should add that language in there just in case.
for sure.
In turn, like maybe the city manager can cancel it for one meeting, but if there's subsequent meetings that need to be canceled, then it needs to be part of the planning commission. Because that would essentially mean that they could come up with an emergency and we would never meet ever again if they wanted to do that.
Oh, we're wishing me to so.
I'm just,
That's good.
it's not personal.
Yes, I know.
That's good.
It might be though.
No, she does make a good point. I mean, the idea there is that, you know, there's
Yeah.
a one-time thing in there.
I mean, we don't want to give the city manager too much power.
You know, the funny thing about this, and of course, I take your point. Is really at the end of the day, if you have a city manager who's acting in bad faith, there's a way to solve that issue.
Mhm.
It's not necessarily something you guys can do. But you shouldn't ever have a city manager who acts in bad faith. You just shouldn't.
Yeah,
I'm sure that there's somebody who
There's been some experiences, I think, here.
thinks there's been an experience of that matter, but you won't have it while I'm here at least. So,
no, you know, it has pros and cons both ways.
Which I wouldn't mind it. It's just that you won't always be here. And
Unless
so
you
having that
commit.
rule in place is not to keep you from doing wrong things.
I guess I'd like,
It's to keep a city manager
Sure.
in check.
I'd like to think that, you know, an emergency is a fairly easy thing to explain. And if you
Mhm.
can't, then maybe the city council needs to take that issue up. So,
I would argue that somebody could argue that something is an emergency when it isn't.
yeah, sure. And again, I think that's something for the city council really to review with the city manager. Of course, you guys probably know the city council members, right? Or are the city council members. So I guess, Ms. Hamel, what are you looking for here then? Shall only have the authority to
Some type, some,
cancel one meeting?
yeah, and then subsequent meetings need to be on the chairperson, or that it needs to be discussed with the city council, or some type of check where it's just not the city manager deciding that they're just gonna cancel all the subsequent.
You're just saying not more than one in a row.
Right.
Uh,
Okay.
Yeah, not like one a year or something, like one.
I'll
not
look at
more
some
than one.
additional language and see what's going on.
Yeah,
I mean, for the most part, you guys have meetings that are canceled for lack of business. That's generally the number one reason. Not this board so much,
I was gonna say, when does that happen?
but I see Sparta cancels half their meetings for lack of business. So, but yes, I will put some additional language in there to prevent the tyranny of the city council or the city manager.
that's,
Perfect.
you know,
Appreciate it. That's my one and only comment. The other stuff all looks amazing.
the weather, and then you could have a medical emergency. Who knows? There's a lot of,
I was thinking that good faith word, something was done in good faith.
Uh-huh.
I think you put it that way,
Yep.
and I think to Mike's point, if Mike or whoever comes after Mike, once he's retired and gone, if they're acting in bad faith, they will be replaced, right? I mean, we have those checks and balances, I assume, in place. That's not here in the city planning commission, correct?
That would be through the city council.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
assume that, yeah.
just be the chair would request that chairman be the one to cancel meetings versus the manager. It'd be another change, and it's
Yeah.
like any ordinance we put in, it's all moving, it can be changed at any time. It's not permanent.
Right.
So,
The only problem with the chairperson canceling the meeting is it's not always easy to get a hold of a chairperson.
correct.
And I'm sitting at City Hall, I know when the roof's been torn off, through a tornado or whatever.
Power outage,
Um,
well, we got a generator.
Anyways.
That sounds good.
Then I will bring this back to you at your next meeting, in a more finalized form and with some additional language.
Perfect.
That's it.
I just had a recommendation of the scheduled public hearing, review, discussion, approval, or recommendation of related public hearing materials.
Okay.
Review, discussion, and action would simplify that.
Okay. Any thoughts on that? Does that
I like it.
work?
Yeah.
Simplifies it.
We didn't have a motion, did we, on the floor for that?
Don't think we really need a motion. This is more.
No, okay. I didn't know if we had an active motion on the floor.
No, we were just discussing
Yep.
that.
So, Mr. Chair, even though we haven't adopted new bylaws, and we did unfortunately bypass the approval of the agenda, we do have Ms. Bevington, who's here for the Arby's restaurant.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Would you be willing to, I guess, skip ahead a little bit, do that one item, then we can go back?
Yes, I'm sorry. I did not know.
It's my fault. I apologize.
Okay, so we are going to skip ahead for a minute to item 10, new business, and we'll go to A, and we will look at Arby's. They are suggesting a second drive-through there. And we should turn it over to Ms. Bevington. Is that right?
Ms. Bevington, so we're gonna review what you've submitted. Would you like to give us a brief overview of what you guys are requesting?
Yeah, I can do that. It's pretty straightforward. That existing Arby's restaurant wants to add a second drive-through. Probably if you've maybe seen it some other quick serve restaurants. I know there's like McDonald's or Chick-fil-A, for example, already has some establishments with that second drive-through. Given the changes, especially after, with the pandemic, they've seen changes in the way their business runs, and it just is a lot more drive-through traffic. And so I think they're able to serve customers more efficiently when they add that second drive-through lane. So the restaurant is remaining as it is today. We're trying to affect the site as little as possible, just to get that second drive-through lane in. I don't know if you guys have the drawing there in front of you to look at. I can pull it up on my screen if you need me to also.
Would be nice. Ours is a little small.
Yeah, they do have the site plan in their packet, so they should be
Okay.
familiar with it. So, Ms. Bevington, the biggest concern that I have pointed out, which you're probably very familiar with, is the parking issue. To put this lane in, you have to remove, I forget how many, but 10 or 12 parking spaces on the rear of the property. Do you think the Arby's will have any difficulties with shortage of parking if you do this?
No, based on their experience, they don't anticipate any issues with parking.
So, Mr. Chair, I believe I put this into my notes. This is, as Ms. Bevington said, it's a pretty straightforward thing. And frankly, I'm not entirely sure I should have brought it to you guys. This is something the zoning administrator can do on their own. The issue is that they currently have something like 62 parking spaces. They're required to have 68, I think, under the ordinance. And by removing this rear row of parking to accommodate the additional drive-through space, they're going to go down to something like 45 parking spaces. Now, I don't eat Arby's, but I've been at Arby's recently during lunch hour to check out their situation. The drive-through is stacked out to the road, and there's very few people parking. But our ordinance says what the ordinance says. Now, this board has on multiple occasions now decided to look past the parking ordinance. I'm sure Mr. Johnson has the language highlighted that gives you the authority to consider alternatives, reduced maximums or reduced minimums. And it's something that I think we're going to be working on here over the winter to come up with a better ordinance. So I guess what I'd propose is that the board talk for a few minutes. You could kick it back to the zoning administrator with the authority to approve of a site plan with reduced parking below the minimum. Or you guys could review and approve it on your own, having reviewed the plans. And I guess asking any questions that you might have.
I have one question. Now, in your notes, you did talk about the sidewalk. Does that need to be in this conversation too? Or is that another one?
I think there's another one.
You were talking about while they're doing this, adding the sidewalk in the front because they're doing it.
Yep, no, sorry, that was part of the actual parking ordinance that we're discussing.
Okay.
So, sorry, I'm reading my notes here. So here are the notes. We could require that they paint a one-way arrow and at the end of the drive-through lane and or put up a no entrance sign facing towards 17 Mile Road. Now, again, if you drive this site, it's not like Taco Bell where you kind of are forced to go up to the drive-through lane. The area that's directly adjacent to their end of the drive-through lane is the exit only of this store. So I don't know if it's necessary, but it's something you could consider. It's a minor, increase in cost for them. And there's going to be at least one person that it might save from going up the drive-through at some point, but that's a call for you guys. I didn't get a chance to go back and look at the ADA parking ramp up into the building, but it looked misaligned for me. Ms. Bevington, do you have pictures of the ADA ramp going into the building? Is that something you looked at?
Pretty flat right there.
No, doing an accessibility study was not part of the scope for this change, but it's something we can consider if that's something that's a concern to the board.
So again, it looked misaligned from my car. I didn't get a chance to go out and actually look at it myself. I've never heard a complaint from any ADA accessible persons out there, but just that's what you guys pay me to do, is look at this kind of stuff. So we may wish to require a no entry sign be posted in the parking triangle next to the proposed do not enter pavement. This would be people coming from, I don't have the map up. They do have a do not enter sign, but it's on the concrete only. So obviously during the winter, that could be
They have
covered with snow.
arrows. There's arrows there also.
Are there arrows there?
Yes. They have pretty much one driveway in and the other one out.
Yep, but these are all pavement markings.
Mhm.
I guess the question is, do you want to have an actual physical sign on a post at that location?
Like on the east driveway? Is that what you're talking about?
So this would be,
This would be from the south.
yes, from the south headed north down the now directional parking lane.
Mr. Chair.
Chair, Mr. Hall would like to address the board.
Oh, I'm sorry.
This is a representative from Arby's. Do you have a sign or anything out at the curbside to enter, to show entrance or exit? Like you see in a lot of the other drive-through or fast food restaurants?
I don't believe, at least our survey does not show one being there today. There are pavement markings, but I don't believe there's a physical sign.
But on some of them, they say, you know, unfortunately, like McDonald's or Wendy's or those, they'll say entrance and exit, this first movement. Is that possible?
Yeah, that would be possible. Obviously, we would have to comply with any kind of sign ordinances. So we would have to take that into consideration, but we can make that change if that would be helpful.
So, Mr. Hall, I'm looking now at Google Maps,
Yeah.
and there is pavement marking at the exit onto 17 Mile Road, but no
Yeah.
signage. But it's a fairly narrow driveway there.
Mhm.
I think you'd have a hard time attempting to actually,
It would be on
Get
that
in there.
island, and, yeah, and it could be more problematic than what it fixes.
Yeah, I think sometimes the concern is, you obviously don't want to affect sight distance there. And the curbs, the radius on those curbs does tend to insinuate, in versus out. But again, if that's something that you guys want, I can take that back to Arby's for discussion.
So note number 4 that I have here says dumpster enclosure. Number 2 details use of chain link gate with brown vinyl slats. That's not permitted under our ordinance. So that's not allowed. 2A listed as an alternative provides gates of corrugated metal, which would be acceptable under the ordinance. So this is a question for the board right now. I mean, it's a pretty obvious one, but you can order that they go with alternative 2A if you're going to make a motion on this. And then number 5, the biggest problem with this site is lack of a sidewalk. So if you look at the front of the site, there's a planter island there. It's not very wide. It's maybe 4 foot wide itself.
Correct.
But there's no sidewalk anywhere near there. There's no sidewalk on their property until you get to the gas station next door, where a sidewalk begins. So, and there's no sidewalk on the other side either, to the Sitco AGO.
Yeah, and there's no sidewalk in front of the strip mall too.
There is now.
Oh, there is.
They just replaced it. Rite Aid doesn't have one, but
So this is part of the ultimate goal of the city, is to get sidewalks so that people can, safely walk through these parking lots. So I guess my question is, does the board want to use this as an opportunity to force Arby's to put a sidewalk in that location? Now, Arby's did luck out a little bit. I don't know if you guys have seen the east side on a overhead map, but they only have about 10 foot
Mhm.
there where they'd be obligated to put sidewalk. I think the rest of that area is probably Kent County Road Commission.
Now, I do have a question. When this was put in, I mean, years ago, they wouldn't have had a, like we're doing nowadays, they wouldn't have had a condition.
So traditionally now with new developments, we'd require them to go to the city council and ask for a sidewalk waiver. I don't know if this was put in prior to the 425's existence. So this could have been built under the township rules, which may have not required that.
Yeah, that's been in for a long time. I think that was probably before the 425 agreement. No,
It was part of the 425 agreement, but back then they weren't requiring any sidewalks because they went nowhere.
yeah, true.
That one ends in
Yeah, you can't.
electrical boxes anyways.
Right, you can't
Yeah.
put anything there.
Well,
That's
that
the-
would have to be fixed. I don't even think that's their property. It looks like, Speedways.
Oh, that's Speedways.
Yeah. I'm just looking at where the sidewalk ends there in front of Speedway and it ends right into two electrical boxes.
The same problem existed at the,
There's a big grade change there too.
the strip mall, and they just went around it.
Alright. Yeah, I'm not saying it's insurmountable, obviously, but
Yeah. So I guess the ultimate question is, you know, you've got 5 or 10 feet on the east and west side. It's the part in the middle that's troublesome. You know, requiring them to install a 5-foot wide elevated walkway there. Not only is it very expensive, but it could cause traffic flow problems.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, something we could do as an alternative is what we did with the Wesco, which is require them to paint and maintain a painted sidewalk through their parking lot,
Yes.
abutting the island there.
Mm.
So that's something we could require.
Yes, I think I like that idea.
yeah, I mean, especially the fact that there's no, it looks like a wide spot from what I can see. Yeah, and it's a narrow,
Yeah, there's a, I mean,
Land there.
not a whole lot of room in there.
yeah.
With their landscape island there.
No.
And even if you did take that out and added the sidewalk, it'd be right on the road.
You'd grade
I
on
li-
the road.
To be
and
honest,
grade
I
in the
like that
parking
idea
lot.
of connecting and having it painted. I think
Yes.
that's a much better alternative looking at.
Well,
site.
and if we take away the island, then we take away more of the natural shrubbery and stuff that we actually asked
Yeah.
for businesses to put in, the planting and stuff.
That's
So then-
required.
and we
That's
don't
our
wanna do that.
landscaping too, and that's required.
Right,
And that's all their landscaping is in that island
and there's plenty of room for them to walk
in the parking lot.
Yep.
behind that island there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Even if they had just the little sidewalk between Arby's and the gas station to get them into the parking lot.
Well, yeah, and then, Mr. Womack, you're saying, sorry, I have Google Maps of myself. Just looking at that part that's to the west. That's in between Sicko and Arby's. That little strip of land is somebody else's. It's not Arby's.
So if you bring up a parcel viewer, you'll see that there's a straight line that goes across and then it immediately
Yeah.
dips down about 10 foot into that large island.
Yeah, I was looking at the site plans too with that. You can kind of see.
You know, and so I believe that's probably Kent County Road Commission property, or at least that they have an easement there. Traditionally, on the parcel viewer, it would show you who the ownership of that property is. But my suspicion is that it's probably Kent County Road Commission there.
They put a sidewalk in, they won't maintain it.
They haven't maintained any of the other ones in town.
No.
Okay.
So after all my notes, it still kind of goes to the question of, do you guys want to vote on this yourself? Do you want a more full report? Do you want to kick it back to the zoning administrator for approval despite the parking restrictions or parking problems?
I'll believe.
I'm comfortable voting on it tonight.
I think, to be honest, I think the changes we've had with the pandemic have probably made the fast food industry more mobile than
Oh, yeah,
dining.
I mean, the,
So that this is just a natural progression, I think, right?
They did the same thing
Any
at
change.
Or
yeah.
Yeah.
sure, I mean,
let
that
the
part,
zoning administrator do it. I mean,
that part makes a lot of sense. There's no issue with that. It's these other little things that are.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it makes the most sense to kick it back to the zoning administrator and let them do it. That's fine. And he'll get what he wants out of it.
Should we let the zoning administrator take care of it and then add like things that we talked about, like we would like the 2A, the alternate coverings for the dumpster enclosure and the painted sidewalk there?
Well, I mean, that's what I would require based on the
Okay.
conversation I'm having with
Okay.
the board.
Yep.
So we wouldn't have to add anything. Got you.
He's already got it.
Yes, Mr. Johnson.
One thing you might want to add for the record is the number of parking spaces your ordinance, and you might want to cite the section, it's 40-513B. It gives the planning commission the authority to set the minimum amount of parking spaces. The zoning administrator doesn't have that authority. So in approving final review by the zoning administrator, you should cite that section of the ordinance that the parking that they are left with or reducing to is acceptable to you based on that section of the ordinance.
Ms. Bevington, do you have the exact number of parking spaces that are being proposed?
Yeah, 1 second, let me find that number. In existing conditions, there are 62 spaces with 3 ADA, 3 of those being ADA. And then in proposed conditions, there would be 45 with 3 ADA.
So that counted.
And Ms. Bennington, are y'all also changing the orientation of the parking spots across from the store? So instead of straight on, you're
They are.
kicking those? Okay,
That's
I
correct. We're
think-
putting them at an angle to encourage that one-way traffic.
thank you. That's
Great.
what I like. Okay.
Good to move.
Ms. Bevington, while I have you, do you have any comments or thoughts about the discussion we had about the sidewalk?
No, that I think that conversation all seemed to be reasonable, made sense to me.
So I guess you're looking for a motion if you have no more discussion.
Okay. Should I just
I
start
get
it or you want to?
Well, I just had a question as to why
Okay.
we would pass it up back to the zoning administrator if we had already decided everything.
Do what?
Why we would send it back to the zoning administrator if we had already made decisions.
Because the zoning administrator can just go ahead and take care of it. It's not really up to, this isn't really something that we really need to
I
take
mean,
care of.
Either way is simple. I can
Right.
also walk you through a motion if that's your preference to take care of it tonight.
Let's have you put a motion forward, and if we like it, we'll approve it. How's that?
All right,
Okay.
so,
With the parking spot thing included.
right, parking,
Okay, so a motion to approve the presented site plan as presented with the following modifications. Let's see here. The planning commission approves of the 45 parking spaces under section
40-513.
4513B. Dumpster enclosure 2A is approved with the corrugated metal. And that they shall install a sidewalk on the east and the west side in the existing, I guess, islands to the east and west, and in the middle, it shall be connected by a painted sidewalk on the asphalt surface. Is there anything else I've missed?
So moved.
now we need to make that motion or,
Mr. McGrath just made it.
okay,
I'll support it.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Bevington. Would you follow up with me probably tomorrow or the next day?
Yep, will do. Thank you all very much for your time.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. We want to do the parking deal or go back up to, it'd be in number 9, old business.
Well, I think we already did 9A. We skipped ahead to help Ms. Bevington out.
Yeah, we go to B.
So 9B. Mr. Chair.
Okay, 9, so we are gonna go back to old business and we are gonna go to 9B, which is the motion to recommend to the city council to accept the donation of property commonly known as 17 North Main Street to the city. That is that small piece of property where the antique store stood next to the Chase Bank parking lot. I believe we talked about it last month, that the Kent County is going to donate that to us. basically.
Yep, that's the proposal. Under the city's ordinances, all such land donations shall be reviewed by the planning commission and they shall make a recommendation to the city council.
Right, and so tonight we are just going to make a motion to accept that land and send that to the council to have it approved.
I think the correct language would be that you would accept a motion to do something with the property. Because somebody may make a motion to not accept it.
Ah, okay,
I'll make a motion to recommend the city council that we accept the donation of property.
I second that. We had this discussion last month for like an
Yeah.
hour.
okay,
Let's just move it on.
all right, so. All in favor?
No,
I,
All opposed?
you didn't call for discussion.
Oh, sorry. Discussion? I thought we just did that.
No.
Sorry.
I have a problem with accepting that property because once we accept it, then the city will have to pay property tax on that piece of property
Not necessarily.
unless we come up with a usable public
yep.
Yes.
use of that space. And we've fought this battle for many years on the council, paying taxes to the county for parcels that they have deemed we do not use it for the public. So I would hate to take this property into the city's possession and end up with another tax roll that we have to pay to the county. My opinion would be let them keep it and let them pay us the taxes. But
So we
That's
had
the
this
will of this
discussion with
board.
the DDA.
Mhm.
And if you guys were out that way for Red Flannel Day, we put every spare picnic table that we had on that property. And there were people out there eating and enjoying themselves. So for the time being, the only plan that we have would be to do that, create essentially a downtown picnic area. The two participating social district businesses have both lauded the idea. I think they like the idea of people being able to take a drink over there and have an alcoholic beverage. I believe having it available as a public picnic area is a tax-free use of the property. Now, there is an alternative proposal, which would be to have it partially be used for tax-free purposes, picnic tables, but then also have a food truck or something permanently parked there. Now, if we were to do that, we would likely be taxed. Now, of course, a smart person would say, well, if the taxes are going to be $500 a year, that just means we have to charge a lot rent, which equals to at least $500 per year. So I don't anticipate taxing being that big of a problem. I understand that the city council may have had poor leadership in the past, which has led to some of these properties being taxed. I think when I came on board, there were something like 12 or 13 city-owned properties that were taxed at that time. I believe we're down to only 1 or 2 that are still taxed. I don't think it's that big of an issue, and as we discussed last time, I'd rather be the master of my own fate versus having the county leave it, and not take care of it.
I agree.
And we did discuss this last month. We talked about, there are things that we can do with it, pocket parks. But I do like that idea with the picnic tables. And then, as he mentioned, with the food trucks. But these would be food trucks that we would get the businesses that are downtown on board with. So like Mike mentioned last month, it wouldn't be a taco truck because we have Jose's, or a burger truck because we have Redbird. So it would be like coffee or waffles or something.
I should point out there's another alternative. If you guys have been to Sparta, they do have a
Yes.
what do you call it? A storage container, a kind of boutique area.
Yep.
We got 2 or 3 non-food stores there.
Incubator business.
And so that's been a common trend recently, is creating these things called incubator businesses, where you essentially give somebody cheap rent, with the hopes that after a year of cheap rent, they decide whether their business is going to be successful or not. Then they move into a more permanent building.
That's my only concern, that we accept this parcel and it sits there and it becomes a tax burden to the city. You know, that's, if we take it in, I want to make sure there's some language that it will be used for public purpose. So we don't get charged with taxes. That's my only concern.
And that will be up to y'all with the city council.
The city council.
It's just an amendment that we need to do with,
Yeah.
I can redo that saying that we'll accept this for use. in
Yeah,
public.
this is just direction for the council that
Yeah.
the guys say, go get it.
Yeah.
But
Well,
that's my,
And
after
I
this one.
appreciate it. That's,
Thank you. That's all I have.
I'll amend my motion and to say that we'll recommend to the city to accept the donation of the property for public use.
But that's still gonna be up to the council though.
Yeah, it will be. I mean, this is our, again, it's a recommendation, right?
But that's recommended. Thank you.
Who was second?
I'll second that.
Were you the original second?
Yeah,
Sorry, it's specific.
It's like,
I'd like to be first, but.
okay, so.
I guess the question is any further discussion? And
Any further discussion? Okay. So we will vote on it. All approved of it? Or,
you can do one of two things. You can either traditionally say all those in favor say
Thank
aye,
you.
or you could do a roll call vote by name.
all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, we shall send that to the council.
Mm.
right back at you.
October will matter.
We can move on
3 weeks.
to item C, which is something we have been discussing past few months. It is the industrial building facade requirements, which Mr. Mike has been working hard on.
Working on, not sure hard, but.
Well,
So if I could, I'll just walk through some of the proposed changes and you guys can let me know one by one whether you like them or not.
yes, please.
Okay, so I mostly took the existing 4463 non-residential design requirements and I modified it and then I added a section at the end. So some of the modifications include, let's see here. I was removing the part that say at least 50% of the building area shall be constructed of materials. I'm not sure I want to hem a developer into it's got to be 50% versus 49%. You know, I think the board is going to be in the best position to look at a thing. I think it was Justice Blackman who said it. You know it when you see it. So I just don't like these 50% numbers, the 30% numbers. So I've mostly eliminated those. I added glass as an approved material. There's some very nice looking buildings that the entire facade is glass. There's a section that says prefabricated steel panels are not acceptable. I added except as otherwise allowed in this ordinance because that's pretty much the entire industrial section. I did add a little section here about cladding and veneers. As you guys are seeing with the Michiganja storefront, there's a big difference between a plastic veneer and a not plastic veneer. So I think if we're going to have people come in and propose those that we want to see and feel and, you know exactly what we're getting, not these, plastic stones that just look horrible. I added some additional language that allows corporate colors in the planning commission's discretion. So for example, the Loom storefront, as you guys will recall,
Mhm.
were you here for that?
It was like just before me, but we've discussed it a bunch.
I wanted purple.
So they proposed what was essentially a bright purple storefront, which is not really permissible under the high intensity color section of that ordinance. But if this board wanted to allow them to have a small amount of purple I think this little section would allow that. You see this commonly used for things like McDonald's. McDonald's is bright yellow arches, right? As far as I'm aware, there's only like one place in the United States where they weren't allowed to have their bright yellow arches. Look it up, it's funny. Again, you'll see I removed 50% in that section. I added a whole section about exterior HVAC and mechanical system screening. If you guys have driven past the Jade Farms, they have a huge mechanical and HVAC system that they didn't put on their site plan. We've had words about that. I see they did put some bushes or something out there.
Yeah, greened them.
Now, I think we have another section in our ordinance which requires screening, but I put this right front and center.
Good.
Let's see, following design requirements for industrial buildings. So this is all brand new. You'll see it's all highlighted. It's mostly what we talked about last time. So I think we went through that pretty in depth last time. Some minor changes I did add, I believe. So corrosion resistant metal panels of at least 26 gauge and then the actual thicknesses. We don't want people putting up the thinnest possible metal. The 26 gauge was, at least what the internet tells me, the standard practice. I add a lot of, additional language like, as approved by the planning commission to give you guys additional outs if you want. There's this whole section about building materials that could be damaged. Of course, we don't want people driving their truck or something into the side of a building, and now for the next 40 years, there's a gigantic divot in the side of the building. But one of the things that really the planning commission should consider are these numbers that you see in here. There must be a minimum of 3 foot of landscape separation or a 6-inch rolled curb and a 5 foot wide sidewalk, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So do you think that those are sufficient distances between a parking area and the building that would then prevent a truck from driving into the building?
No.
Is 3 foot an acceptably wide landscaped area?
Accidentally, I've seen little old ladies hit the wrong gas and they go right through and there's no way you can stop them, but whatever we put there is better than nothing.
Now, we generally require a 7 foot wide sidewalk when it is adjacent to a parking area, because the idea is that your truck or whatever will overhang 2 foot onto the sidewalk. So if that is kind of the standard, a 2 foot addition on the sidewalk, is a 3 foot landscaping island sufficient to keep, truck and buildings separate? That's a question for you.
Now this, the 5 foot sidewalk, would that be in the right of way or on their property?
This would be on their property, kind of surrounding the building. For employees to walk to the front door.
So that plus the 3 foot?
Nope, at least the way I thought I wrote it is that
So 4.
There must be a minimum of 3
you
foot.
could
of
have this, or you could have that.
Either or.
I think part of that is in there probably for safety of people walking on sidewalks, and there's no sidewalk there. You don't really need that distance, right? That's what I'm reading in this.
Well, so this isn't really designed for pedestrian safety. Now, I'd like to think that they would take that into account anyways. When I write these ordinances, I do try to do it in such a way that you can accommodate 2 or 3 things at the same time. Now, by putting a 5 foot wide sidewalk, they're both doing pedestrian safety and eliminating this requirement that they put in a higher quality material in that location. But really, this is about designing a building that's not going to be dented for 20 years because someone, overhung their truck in front of the building. That's really what this is designed for.
Yeah, you gotta have that buffer in there.
But with this, that's saying that they could just do 3 feet of landscape separation around the entire building and not have any sidewalks, correct?
Correct.
That would be
So,
like Jade
okay with that.
Farms.
It's an industrial, it's,
This is an industrial building concept.
not for commercial retail.
Yeah, this is not going to be the Jimmy John's downtown. This is going to be the big industrial buildings out in the middle of nowhere. Now, we could just say, you gotta have a 5-foot sidewalk around the entire thing. Now, if you guys have been out to Jade Farms, 3/4 of that building is nowhere near their parking area.
Mhm.
So there, they would likely put in a 3-foot landscaping area.
That's the only thing I was thinking of the sidewalks for, is for like people who work there.
Actually, that wouldn't even be required there. So the 3-foot wide landscape separation is only for paved surface driveway or vehicular building entrances. So industrial buildings wouldn't even require that unless it's near where vehicles are.
So if there's like parking on the corner, wherever the parking lot meets the building, then they'd have to have that.
Either the 3-foot landscaping
Or a
the
sidewalk.
5-foot sidewalk, yeah.
I personally think that's fine,
Yeah, I mean,
because again, these are industrial places that inevitably probably should have safety policies for their employees in place. So,
Well, but we're not really caring about employees here. We're caring about the building.
mm,
but who's gonna hit the building is gonna be employees if it's not open to the public.
So if you guys are okay with those numbers,
So,
you see the same language there for building colors. And then I added the must have exterior windows if you have administrative space that abuts an exterior wall. So. So did I skip over the cap and the base part? So C, subpart 2. We discussed this at length last time, but are you guys okay with the base, body, and cap concept?
Mhm.
mhm,
You have to have 3 separate, distinct areas.
yeah.
Then you see that the cap shall consist of cornice, parapet, awning, canopy, etc., or other acceptable distinguishing architectural features. These areas shall be distinguished through changes in color, material, pattern, profile, or texture. At least this way, we're not going to have slab-sided buildings.
mhm.
But it's a fairly easy standard to meet, I think. Mr. Johnson, do you have any thoughts or concept or ideas?
One thing that jumped out to me was the on page. I have a paper copy here, but you talk about the cladding, that last sentence there,
Yeah.
where it says plastic cladding or veneers are strongly discouraged. That's probably not the best language to put in the zoning ordinance.
Yeah.
It's not really enforceable. If you don't want it, then just say shall not be allowed.
Yeah.
There's no question. You don't have to fight over it when they come in the door and try to convince you that they should have it.
Yeah.
Very true.
Well, I guess I always like to think there's some plastic cladding out there that's probably acceptable, but
There's not.
I guess that's a question for the board then. You guys want to strictly prohibit plastic cladding and veneers?
Well, I mean, we seen what it looked like down there, down the street. Their plastic stone veneer down there did not look good at all.
Where's that at?
At Michigana, or
Yeah,
whatever you
next
call
to
it.
the old cafe.
You know, the old Cedar Cafe, how they put the fake plastic stone on first, and that's not what we approved. Mike had a talk with them and had them take that all down and put the actual masonry veneer on.
Cultured rock stuff.
Yeah, the cultured rock. You see how they made that change?
Oh, did they try to use that stuff that goes around mobile homes?
Pretty much, yeah.
It was
It
thin.
looked cheap.
It was up for about a
Yeah.
month. It
Yeah,
looked
then
terrible.
if it's like that stuff that goes around skirting for mobile homes, if that's
No.
what you're talking about, like plastic cladding like that.
Well, I mean, it wasn't that bad.
No, it wasn't that bad, but it was plastic stone. It
I
looked
would
like,
just say
I just
plastic.
think take it
not
out
allowed.
because we gave them a lot of different options for
Yeah.
what they could do.
Yeah.
It's not like we said you can use only this or this.
Mm.
Now you're like,
Just
Yeah.
plastic,
really
plastic
narrow down.
cladding and veneer are
Plastic
not
Yeah.
allowed.
Are prohibited.
are prohibited, yeah.
much better wording.
That sounds good, because I don't,
Just get it out of there.
plastic doesn't need to
That
be.
way you don't have to fight with it.
We'll save more trees.
Okay, so I mean, I pretty much walk you through everything. You have anything else?
That's the only thing that really jumped out at me.
Okay.
That sounds
So I
good.
guess if you guys are fine with this, I'll put it into a final format, bring it back, and Ms. Johnson, do you want to do a public hearing on this? We'll do a public hearing on this.
Okay.
ooh, congratulations.
Yeah, and then I won't have to sign it.
See Rose again for the public hearing.
By the way, Mr. Hall, I was writing an ordinance today. At the very end of the ordinance, it says signed by clerk Rebecca Johnson and mayor Jerry Hall. I highlighted Jerry Hall because I wasn't quite sure if you'd be the one signing.
Good point. After November, I won't be.
Mayor Ashley Hamel, maybe.
There you go.
She better get some signs up.
I am going to.
Just saying.
Whoever,
Competition's posting all over
I
town.
know.
whoever the
It's so bad
council
right now.
chooses, that's who's gonna be the one, right, miss?
Oh, right.
Miss Mayor Powell, is that what you said?
Ugh.
She's-
So, Mr. Nixon, are you ready to move on to
Yes.
walls and fences?
Yes.
Ooh,
walls and fences.
Fences.
I think we've had this on your agenda for over a year.
I'm actually
Mhm.
really excited about this.
And I do have questions on this one.
Hold on, Ms. Hamel, are you stating that you would benefit from the passage of this ordinance?
No, I would not.
Okay, because that might be a conflict of interest.
No, that would be, but no, it has nothing, I'm not doing anything. with this.
Okay, so again, you see, traditionally, I'll highlight things that were modified. This is a significant rewrite of your fence ordinance.
Yes.
The fence ordinance that currently exists, I don't even know what year it was written, 82 perhaps. Very, very basic. Unfortunately, just in my practice as zoning administrator, people want to put all different sorts of stuff up as fences. So I've tried to write it to be as favorable to the citizens as possible while also maintaining a high quality of fence material. So I'll start at the beginning. See subpart 3. This essentially eliminates those fence slats that I'd like to think every person on the planet hates. I hate them. I think they're horrible.
Mhm.
So that's what that does. In subpart D, subpart, let me, I apologize. D subpart 2, see-through fences or walls must not exceed, I highlighted 6 foot in height. This would be in the rear or side yard of residential or commercial properties. 6 foot high see-through fences are a little abnormal, even in the rear yard.
I-
So there are a few places where I've seen this in the community where they do have a 6 foot tall chain link fence in the rear yard, and it just looks out of place.
My backyard has it from the high school.
So I guess the question is, do you
School
want to
property.
allow 6
Mhm.
foot, or do you want to go with the more traditional 4 foot for a chain link fence in the rear yard? Or any kind of see-through fence, really?
Is this ordinance geared more towards the residents or to the commercial side?
So this is for commercial and residential. There are different rules for industrial.
Cause my chain link fence is 5 foot.
Mm-hmm.
Cause they had tall dogs. I mean, you put a 4 foot limit on that and people that got big dogs go right over them.
Could we put some type of language in there that in the residential would be 4 foot and commercial would be 6? Where,
My fence is 5. Black chain link.
Anything you want. Well, so, and the answer to that would be, you just got to put up a privacy fence,
Mhm.
which is now up to 6 feet.
yeah,
But does,
Things that are existing now, wouldn't it be grandfathered in?
yes, unfortunately, that is how the law works.
Not that I'm aware. But I just
Say that
concerned about people
How
with
does-
tall
how does it
dogs.
work?
I mean, 4 foot is not a tall fence.
Yeah, generally speaking, cities cannot tell you to take your fence down if it was legal at the time it was.
Okay, okay.
yeah.
right.
I mean, but the way you got it wrote, see-through fences must not exceed 6 feet. I mean, we don't have it saying that they can't exceed 4 feet, correct?
That's what he's saying is if we want to change it to.
Oh.
4.
Yep, and so what Mr.
Because the 4 is
Hall,
for front yard, 6 is for side and back.
what Mr. Hall is saying is for residential, we can say 4 foot max, but for commercial, 6 foot.
Mhm.
But I don't care. This is your fence ordinance. I just wrote it.
I would just be concerned with backyards if people got tall dogs. 4 foot chain link, don't keep their dogs in their fence.
So they can put a privacy fence up, which is 6 foot tall.
Yeah.
I like what Mr. Jerry proposed there. The 4 foot for the residential and 6 foot for commercial.
Why does commercial get 6 foot though? Just asking.
Security.
Security.
Yeah.
You know, you got places that have commercial equipment, things like that. You want to try to keep people from just bailing over in there.
Yeah, we can't have barbed wire no more.
But I would like to keep people out of my
Yeah.
backyard too.
I was just gonna say, you can make an argument.
So the argument that I made last year when we started this with Ms. Bremer was if your neighbor kid kicks the soccer ball over your fence, do you really want them having to climb a 6-foot tall barbed wire topped spikes and all galore fence to get into your backyard to get their soccer ball?
Teach him to be careful.
That would be the traditional argument. In residential zones, kids lose their ball over your fence.
Mhm.
But they should come to your front door and knock on your door. They shouldn't climb your fence.
Never did.
Well, you were a bad kid though.
I was.
I guess that's like encouraging trespassing though.
Well,
Well,
The
it's the
argument
same
makes
with a
no sense
6-foot
to me.
privacy fence.
Yeah, we're not gonna fix everything. It's just what are we gonna try to fix with this ordinance? That's kind of the way
Yeah.
we gotta look at it.
And what is the purpose of this? I mean, that's what you gotta look at, is purpose. Is the purpose to make our city look good, livable?
This specific section or the whole thing?
I mean, I think each section is gonna be a little bit different, right? I mean, each one has the
Yeah, like what the point.
residential is obviously gonna be different from
Yeah,
our commercial spaces and for
It's like,
reasons,
it's
right?
like everything we do, we gotta balance certain things.
Mhm.
We've had people who've tried to take scrap wood and cobble it together into a fence.
Pallets.
It looks horrible.
Hey, Tim.
Yeah, I mean, plastic snow fence, they want to use a bright orange on a permanent basis. I just, we don't, I'm not gonna say that, but we want the city to look nice.
Mhm.
We want the citizens to have choice of what they put up,
Well, take ownership in there.
but we also have safety concerns.
and well, that's my point. I mean, I got a 5-foot black vinyl chain link fence my whole backyard. I think it's great looking chain link fence. And then to say that we pass this and the neighbor next door can only put up a 4-foot tall black vinyl chain link fence.
Yeah,
I mean,
they can request it to go higher.
I guess my only concern would be for the bigger dogs. 'Cause that part.
can we change it to 5 foot? You rarely see 6 foot.
Cause you can do the privacy fence, but I think most of them are wood, right? And those big dogs can like eat it.
Yeah,
Well, I mean. they
So
make
isn't that
privacy
why you
fence
usually
out of
do?
Everything.
you get chain link first.
But Mr. Marlington did ask, would the board be comfortable changing that to 5 foot for residential?
Because you see chain link, it's 4, 5, or 6.
Mhm.
Those are the three.
Okay,
I could do 5.
5 foot.
5's great.
That's all.
Gives us an in-between.
I think so.
If they want a 6-foot chain link, they can request it.
So 5 foot in residential and 6 foot in commercial.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
A happy medium there.
I'll make that change for you.
That sounds good.
So subpart 3 immediately next door. So as you guys will recall, we have 2 places in town that put these polyethylene privacy screens on a pre-existing see-through fence.
Mm.
One of them was installed correctly, one was not.
Tight fitting.
So
It's
this,
gone,
this adds specific language to require it to be tight fitting. And also it prohibits that type of use in a residential zone district.
Correct.
So I actually have somebody in my neighborhood that does this. It doesn't look great. But it's at least tight fitting, so I guess we'll go for that.
The fence is gone now too.
So if no problems with that one,
No,
No. And that's
Okay.
only commercial. That would not be allowed in residential, correct?
no,
Yeah.
no, just
Just
commercial.
making sure.
okay, so this was the main impetus of why we looked at the ordinance. So we have a couple of people, so we have one person in particular who wanted to put up a 6-foot tall privacy fence in their front yard on a corner lot. Because if you have a corner lot, you generally have 2 front yards. Any part of your house that fronts upon a public road is considered a front yard. And as you guys know, front yard fences can be different than backyard fences. Well, so the argument from the homeowner is that by doing that, you're limiting their ability to use their yard because they didn't feel comfortable having their daughters use the pool when people could drive by and see the daughters in the pool. So he wanted to put up a 6-foot tall privacy fence in his front yard, which is not permitted under the old ordinance. So there's a lot of language in here. Some of it's alternative language. So I guess I'll start with, is the board okay with allowing 6-foot privacy fences in front yards and corner lots?
So this is the part that I was excited about. I think so, because I agree that it does limit your use of your land. When we were looking to buy in Cedar Springs, we found a house that was on the corner, and the house was like all the way on the back, so it actually didn't even have a backyard at all. And we have 3 littles that we were like looking up the ordinance to see if we were gonna be able to use the outside at all. So I think for sure, like calling one part of it, like I'm fine with not doing like one, like surrounding the entire
Solid.
house makes sense. But calling one of the sides,
Yep.
not a front yard.
Yeah,
to
so
Be able to,
the language I use
up the
is
fence.
secondary front yard. We can call it whatever you want.
Mhm.
So we'd only allow this in one of the yards,
Yep,
not
and I
both.
think that that's totally fair.
But the next most important question becomes, how much of that secondary front yard do you want to allow to be behind a fence? The 2 probably logical choices would be, 1, you'd allow it to cover any part of the side or rear yard. It's hard to make it without visualization here.
Yeah.
I think I sent you guys this previously by email.
Yeah.
You could go up to, I guess, the sidewalk area in the side yard, or you could allow it across the entire secondary front yard, which would also cover the facade of the home. In other words, you would have a 6-foot tall privacy fence between the house and the road.
That's
Could
not good.
could we have a language in there where it doesn't, a clear vision issue for an intersection?
Well, I thought that,
That's in there.
I
Yeah, we'll
thought
get to
that was number 4. Under E there, I thought that's what 4 was,
I didn't
because
find it.
that enables the zoning administrator to go out there and say if it's safe or not, right?
So that's part of it. Obviously, it's not something I'd want to do ever, because I'm like you guys, I want people to be able to use the land the way they want to. It would only be in an extreme case where I would say, no, you can't do that.
Yeah.
But there is a separate section, which is part I, where I do have some additional language about vision obstruction,
Okay.
which can lead to some awkward situations. So we'll-
Mm-hmm.
And we're only talking corner lots here,
Right.
correct? Just
Yeah.
only corner.
Yeah, I'm okay with the right of way 25 feet back from either intersection with a 6-foot fence on what the street side of the side yard. That's not, I know, I can remember how many years ago we decided this then. The front yard could not be 4 foot only. The side yard was, as long as there wasn't a clear vision issue on the turn for the intersection. That's my only concern, and I don't see a problem with this.
And that was the whole thing that I brought up when we started this was, I mean, if you look at Ham and Clint's house, their 6-foot privacy fence is set back. So,
But not
You've
everybody
got-
has 25 feet to set back.
Correct.
but that's
That's a
the
lot.
problem. If you don't, and you put it up next to the road, you're going to have visibility issues. Especially in subdivisions where you could have
I
kids
think
coming
so. There's one
around.
on a subdivision, in my subdivision that has a fence on the side part of it, and it's a corner lot.
And they
And-
can't obstruct clear
Yeah, oh,
vision
yeah,
for
we know.
traffic.
Which,
And
by
it
the way,
doesn't obstruct you.
both of those fences are illegal. Because this law has been on the books since 1982, they couldn't have gotten permission to put those up. But you guys are
I'm not
getting,
advocating.
you guys are getting ahead of yourselves. There is a section about that. We'll get to it.
Okay,
Okay,
So,
and I like part 4.
so the question is, do you guys want to allow them to cover just the side and rear yard, or the whole thing with the facade of the house as well?
What do you
I
mean
guess I'm
the
not
facade?
understanding. Can you draw a picture?
The facade, you mean like the front of the house?
Correct.
That's what I'm,
You mean the whole lot?
No. Partial. Let's say this is the intersection here. The house sets right here.
Mhm.
They can put, the whole side yard would be from here, which would be 25 feet back. back to their property, or we only allow them to put the fence from here to here.
Yeah, from here
Oh.
to here, I think you need to pick what side is the secondary.
Yeah, let's say this,
can't
this
have
is
both
a
of them be the
front, no.
secondary.
This.
Where's your
this
drawing, Mike? Let me
cannot
see what you
be
got.
Oh.
Streamed.
Yeah, see for.
This will be the corner intersection. And this is the house. Now you just entered the full length would run to the front of the house, 25 foot back from that intersection. That would be full length. Or not allowing a fence from, let's say, the corner of the house back to
Yeah, you
there.
essentially got it. So here's the drawing that I've made.
Mhm.
Facade of the house, streets. We're talking about you can cover the entire part or just from the back corner
Front
over.
corner, back corner.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's, I'm good with that one.
Kind of.
Yeah,
Okay, I got
House,
you.
road,
that's what I interpreted as.
this would be the facade. So you
You're not
can
gonna
start at
cover
this
the side of
corner
the
and go
house.
all the way to the back, or just the side yard from the street.
Okay. Understand that.
Thank you for doing that.
Sure.
Thanks.
So, what do you guys want to do?
I don't like covering the facade of the house myself. I mean,
Mine either.
not at all. You're putting privacy fence in the front of the house is gonna look terrible.
Agree.
The challenge is if you only allow it from the back, that could make just a very, very small.
That's what, okay, so the house that I have in my head that we went to go see, the problem is the house isn't over here. It's like,
It's back over.
it was way over here.
Mhm.
Like, so then your front yard and side yard is all over here. And so you'd have, in order to cover it, to make any kind of yard, you'd have to cover the facade, which I think is fine as long as you just do it on one side.
Part of the
You have
problem
to pick
is
which one.
we can't solve every problem.
And what about like
Yeah,
Pam and Clint's house? You have to cover the facade because they would have no, there is no yard back behind their house.
yeah, the yard I used to live in also would have been.
I don't know. I think their yard's pretty big.
Yeah, you know,
It's
you,
about the size of this room.
It's a pretty big yard.
Mhm.
I mean, again, maybe this is one of those things where you guys have to go out and take a look at various houses in the community.
Yeah.
But, you know, we don't have to write these rules to solve every single buddy's problem.
Yep. You're right.
They bought the house the way it was.
Mhm.
Some people have put up illegal fences. I get it. But we are trying to change the law to their benefit. We don't have to give away everything. And I think Mr. Merlington has expressed a legitimate concern. It looks bad.
I mean, that's just my personal feeling, but if you're covering the front yard from the road with a privacy fence, it looks terrible. I mean,
yeah, they would have to designate it.
But there's no backyard is the issue. There's-
bought the
there's
wrong
only
house.
Front yard.
they bought the wrong house.
Move it up.
They bought the wrong house. What can I say?
Yeah, that's it. We can't fix
Yeah,
everything.
you can't solve, there's only what, a few in the whole town like that,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
You generally, when you have a corner lot, you don't have much of a backyard anyways,
No.
unfortunately, because you got two
Right.
front ish.
You can always go,
They can always ask.
go for a variance.
They can always go for a variance. Even if you put that law into a place, they can ask for a variance,
Yeah,
That is true.
you know?
That is true.
but we don't want to make a rule that we're then gonna just accept a bunch of variances.
That's not,
If we're gonna. It
Also,
should.
it's
it
probably
should
the
be-
better way to
should
do
be
it,
the
though.
rule- I don't think so. It should be what we think is gonna happen 99% of the time, and then the few exceptions that we get, we let in. It shouldn't be, it's a 60-40 and we're just gonna have all these.
yeah, I don't think this is
exceptions, but
a
we should be writing the
60-40
rules.
though. I think there's only 4 or 5 lots in the entire town.
Which is, that's
Yeah,
fine, but
yeah.
I'm just saying if we are making it a rule, it should be the rule almost all the time, unless you have a very good reason to come in here and ask us for a variance. If every variance gets a exception, we
And it
probably should have
is.
just written it into the ordinance to begin with.
And it is under item O, that they may come before the Board of Appeals for a variance.
Yeah, and I'm all for that.
Mhm.
So something a lot of people misunderstand is variances are not second guessing.
No,
You don't get to present the plan to the zoning administrator and then present the same exact plan to the board and then have the board overrule you. Similar to the court system, a ZBA is essentially looking at, did these city manager, zoning administrator correctly interpret the law? Which is why in my 5 years here, the ZBA has yet to approve of a variance. They just haven't, because people think it's getting a second opinion. That's not what it is.
But if we have it where they can get a variant, or
They can.
if they
They got
can get a variance, then that means that they feel like they can come before us before they act. Before they just throw it up there and go, oh, well,
Hmm.
you know, so before they act, I think, like Mr. Merlington said, we enact this, and if they need a variance, they could come here and they can do that. And that is a way that they could do that before they enact their fence and take it into
But
their
I'm
own
saying
hands.
if we can't anticipate what the variance, what people are gonna come here with saying, I wish you would
You're never
accept
gonna-
this. And we're anticipating accepting it, we should just write it into the ordinance from the beginning, so they don't have to get a waiver.
You'll never be able to guess all the things.
Well, that's
people
what we're
can come
talking
up
about
with.
right now, is whether we want it to be,
Well, if it was up
Cover
to me,
the-
there would never be a
cover the
fence
side
in
yard
front of a
line.
house. A privacy fence in front of a house. I would never.
yeah,
Want
that's what
one,
we're debating
or-
right
yeah.
now, is whether we want to do that, not
Yeah,
just pick one and then let everybody else do a variance.
I
We
I
should-
think what Mr. Merlington is saying is that he thinks it looks horrible. He would never agree to it, but he's meeting everybody halfway and saying, yeah, you acknowledge that some houses were installed incorrectly on a lot, and that this would be ultimately to the benefit of a significant number of people, which is why I think he's saying, I'm willing to allow it on that reason, but it still looks bad.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I mean, they would still have to ask for that variance to be done in. I mean, it sounds like there hasn't been one approved in the last 5 years.
Well, so I don't want to get bogged down.
Mhm.
I knew this was going to be
Yeah.
a hot topic. How about you guys take the next month, go look at some other houses, say if they put up a fence, would it look bad? Would they get a significant increase in the size of their yard?
I would like to have a couple addresses if you know those ones. I'd love to drive by them.
Well, you may want to call me, at the office or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Heck, I'd be willing to drive out there and look at them with you.
Mhm.
So. Okay, so let's skip ahead then. Really nothing on that next page. I do highlight sometimes just places I have to go back and fill in numbers. That doesn't mean there was actually a change.
I did have a question when we get to garden fences.
Okay, haven't quite got there yet.
Okay.
So I didn't highlight this section because I think we talked about it previously, but walls and fences in industrial zone districts. So for the most part, barbed wire has been eliminated from everywhere in the city except for the industrial zones. Commercial zones are prohibited from having it unless they come back to this board with evidence that they need it. Because we don't like it. It looks bad, it's dangerous.
Yeah.
But if your store has been broken into 7 times this month, that's probably a legitimate reason to come into the board and say, hey, I really need this. But you'll see it's a very basic system that I'm allowing, or the ordinance is allowing in the industrial zone district. It's a very standard barbed wire. It can only exceed 2 foot above a 6-foot fence, so 8 foot altogether. No razor wire, et cetera, et cetera. It does allow the barb sauvage, which is just at the very top of the fence. It does one of those. So I thought that was pretty straightforward. Temporary fences, we actually have a significant problem with that. So I put some timeframes in there. If they're less than 4 days, I really honestly don't care. It takes me 4 days to find the fence, and by that time, hopefully it'd be done. We would allow it up to a year, but if it's anywhere between 4 days and a year, you have to get a permit for it. And again, permitting isn't so much about the money. It'll probably be a $5 permit. It's more about, I want you to acknowledge that it's going to be taken down within a year. Some people like putting snow fences up on their property, during the winter. So that's temporary fences.
What's a snow fence?
Bright orange, 4 foot tall, made out of plastic.
It helps stop the drifting.
Okay.
It helps stop snowmobilers.
Well, the snow.
Hey, what's
plow,
wrong with snowmobilers?
Okay.
You don't see it very often.
So we're now over at fence prohibitions, section I. This is when we're getting into obstructed vision. So unfortunately, this can cause some kind of awkward looking fences. So the top one, you'll see the 25-foot, that's standard. That language is currently in the ordinance and I do enforce it. The next part is the driveway. You'll see a 5-foot separation between a driveway and fence. This is designed for the front yard fence. Because obviously, you know, if you've got a 3-foot tall privacy fence in the front yard, you can see over it. But if your next door neighbor who's on a corner lot decided to put up a 6-foot tall privacy fence in the front yard, now little Johnny going down the sidewalk can't see a car backing up. So we don't want to allow them to have their 6-foot privacy fence all the way to the corner where the driveway is located. So we create these little awkward 5-foot cutouts where you can't put your privacy fence there, and now you have to make a little kind of triangle there where the fence doesn't go. So little Johnny can see the vehicle backing up, or the vehicle can see little Johnny on the bicycle.
Okay.
So it looks funny, but that's the reason for it.
It's a safety issue, yeah.
Yes.
Any thoughts, questions, concerns?
Save Johnny.
Mm,
Protect Johnny.
Okay, section 5, next page. No fence shall be given an electrical current. That was obviously written for, you know, cow fences. However, there are some people who install underground fences for their dogs, which are low voltage. If we were to allow that, we'd have to rewrite some other parts of other ordinances, which is why that's highlighted. The other issue is, you know, when someone's got a 200-pound mastiff who's very grumpy, we don't want them to simply be out there with a underground fence when there isn't actually one. So we'd probably want to require that they have some kind of sign out there saying, hey, underground fence. So I guess my question for you is, the current law says all dogs must be physically restrained, which allows a physical fence. An underground fence would not meet that requirement. We would have to rewrite the ordinance. So what do you guys want to do?
there
Underground fences for dogs are only as good as the dog.
there it is.
Yeah,
I came from a subdivision, lived there for 15 years. 3 people across the street all had them. When the dogs want to cross them, they just run right through them.
They just-
Literally run right through them.
Yep,
They get shocked for a second and
they know
on
about
there
it.
they go.
They run.
So the neighborhood where I walk my dogs has several of those. I will cross the street because those dogs are aggressive and they will attack my dogs.
And it's all about the dog, you know, but they won't stop dogs.
Yep.
I mean, if the dog wants to go through, it will go through.
I'd say leave it as it is because
yeah.
they don't work that well. They're 50% of the time.
Nope, they don't.
Ordinance, they
and
must
it's
be
up-
on a leash, works all the time.
And it's also up to the owner to keep batteries in the collars.
Oh, yeah.
And so,
There you go.
you know,
And
Where-
those, well, sorry, those little fence wires are so small. Those fence wires go bad a lot,
mhm.
you know.
So yeah, I think we're good on that.
I'd leave it the way it is.
So garden fences.
Bro.
So keep in mind, this was specifically requested by Miss Bremer while she was on the board. So I did the best I could. I get it. People have little gardens and they want to prevent the whatever animals from getting into their gardens.
The rabbits.
But one of the biggest problems we have in this community are people who put up chicken wire fences. And then they use that for their, I guess, yard fence, their perimeter fence. It looks horrible. It's cheap. It falls apart because it's not, you know, high quality.
Mhm.
We don't want that. We don't want woven wire, woven plastic, trellis, lattice, etc., as a perimeter fence. But we do want to allow people to have some type of fencing for their gardening. So that's what I've proposed.
Kind of a bit of an overreach.
Well, that's another part of it. You know, when you start legislating this type of stuff, it is a bit of an overreach.
And 400 square feet, that's a big garden. That's a 40 by 40 garden.
Ms. Bremer actually told me that that wasn't big enough.
I would love to see a 40 by 40 garden in this town. There might be one.
She has 3 yards, so she thinks it works.
I think you need to redo item 5 in that. Because you talk about all areas enclosed by a garden fence shall remain free of animal or pet waste. Well, people do use compost to make their garden grow better. So we might need to either
Well-
take that out or find a way to say, pet waste excluding compost, or
I can assure you that on no planet that I'm city manager would we say, oh, you went to the store and got a bag of manure and you're using that in your garden. Well, you're getting cited for that under subpart 5. Now, the problem here is people who do not take care of their dogs will create a 4-foot wide enclosure out the back door and say, okay, little foo-foo, go poop in your enclosure. And then the poop is 3 foot deep,
And it smells.
smells to high heaven.
And it's their garden fence.
Yes. So that's why that part was written in there. I mean, I guess it could be an enforcement issue.
You put strike animal and just put pet waste.
Okay. Pet waste, I could put excluding store-bought manure, something.
Well, pet waste, we're targeting pet waste, dog.
because I do have pets that provide me with great manure that I use in my garden. So
They're considered farm animal. Dogs aren't
it's not dogs.
agricultural.
Yes, buns, we get it. Okay.
Question. For the garden fence. I have a 6-foot privacy fence around my backyard. Then do I have to not use any of the fences that no one's literally gonna see?
Well, and this goes to Mr. Hall's point. It is a bit of an overreach.
Cause I feel like this is okay, I guess, for like a front yard garden area, like by your
It does
house,
say backyard.
but I mean. It's a lot of rules for my backyard that nobody sees.
Well, it does say garden fences are only permitted in the side or rear yard.
Yes.
They're
Cannot be
only
erected in the
permitted.
front yard.
Doesn't mean that you have to put a fence up around your garden.
And shall only apply with the absence of a privacy fence.
There you go.
Yeah,
Again, sometimes this is
in
a,
the backyard, it just seems like.
sometimes it's an enforcement issue. Mr. Hall's heard me say it 100 times. We write the laws for the lowest common denominator. You're not gonna get harassed if you've got a little garden fence around your garden plot in the backyard with a 6-foot privacy fence and I can't see it. It's the people who put, chicken wire fencing up in their front yard. That's the issue.
But I feel like we could be more specific with that and target that. You know me and rules. I don't like to have a rule that's not gonna be enforced.
Which is fine. That's why we like having you on the board. But this was specifically requested by Ms. Bremer because she felt that chicken wire should be a usable thing for a garden fence.
I have chicken wire in the back of my house. I didn't put it there.
I don't know your address, but you're getting a call.
I think we can track that
I'm in the
address down.
process of taking it down slowly, but anyways, regardless, whatever, it's there. Nobody would complain about it because no one can see it.
Right.
And so I think that's a little bit of an overreach.
But it's
And
in
I think
the-
that we can specify that if it's in the front of the house, that then it's not allowed.
Well, so I guess my question for you would be, this ordinance, this section of the ordinance specifically allows chicken wire fences, et cetera, in your backyard.
Yes,
That's what it's saying.
Yeah, okay, so I'd be fine with that.
not in the front.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're covered.
So I didn't like this section. I didn't like writing it. But it's something that was requested and it's up to you guys whether you want to keep it in there or take it back out. It makes sense. People want to put some, fabric around their garden instead of putting a cyclone fence or a privacy fence around their garden. That makes sense to me. But we also want to eliminate people who put up these super cheap chicken wire fences as though they were their perimeter fence.
So as of right now, is chicken wire not allowed?
It is not.
It's actually in an ordinance right now.
It is, again, this is part of the poor writing of 1982.
We're wire number 6.
Yeah.
So here's what the ordinance says. No person shall place, string, or maintain chicken wire, agricultural fencing, barbed wire, or razor wire as part of any fence structure in any zoning district.
Wow, they just.
Hold on though. However, that's not what it actually says. It says, or maintain chicken wire, agricultural fencing, barbed wire. There's no actual comma there. So, what is agricultural fencing, barbed wire? It should be agricultural fencing or barbed wire, but that's not what it says. So it specifically excludes chicken wire, but you'll see in my ordinance, it says all sorts of other types of, the stuff they sell up at Family Farm and Home.
Yeah.
Anyways, neither. here nor there. So I guess before again we get bogged down into this, is this something you guys are okay with? Do you want to make modifications to it? We just not like it in general? What's going on?
I mean, it's a better one that's written now. It's better than what's in the book.
Yeah. Agreed.
You can always change it later on.
Well, it's better than the one that's in there in 1980, that's for sure.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I have a question. In number 6, it says except for garden fences, no permanent wall or fence may use fencing made of material. And it lists these things. Now that means what garden fences can be made of. Plastic safety fence?
So when I looked up,
Snow fence?
I think when I looked up on Home Depot, it called snow fence a safety plastic fence.
Those are allowed temporarily.
But you
No,
have,
he's saying that that's a garden fence.
yeah, but he's got orange, red, and yellow and bright colors not permitted.
See? There's, you gotta read the
Again,
rest
though,
of it.
I don't agree with that. I don't agree with it because in my backyard, why can't I have a pink fence around my garden? It doesn't affect anybody.
You
I
can
should be able
just,
to. No, it says I cannot. It
just
says those
don't
fluorescent
tell
colors.
anybody.
Again, we cannot have rules that are just gonna be, well, it's okay if nobody can see it. You should obey the rule because it's the rule.
But
It's
if
in
you
the book,
did, but if you
not
didn't,
Because I'm not gonna get caught.
but if you didn't have a privacy fence in your backyard and you could look at your neighbor's backyard
I
and they had,
I can see in my neighbor's backyard. So yes, you can because of
well, say you
second
say,
stories.
yeah, say
So
you went
I
on your.
understand that, but like it's your own property and it is not visible to like the public. I don't think that's my opinion. I think it's too much.
Again, we could qualify in the absence of a privacy fence.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true.
I kind of like the way it's written myself. It just takes the bright colors out. I mean,
So
it gets rid of the orange snow fence. It gets rid of the bright obnoxious colors.
we're obviously going not to do anything on this tonight, so we're going, do we need to table this or just,
Well,
this was just discussion?
no, you guys are giving me information because I'm seeing what you do and don't like. I'm gonna
Okay.
rewrite it, bring it back to you, hopefully in a more finalized.
Right.
form. I know it's a slog, which is why we haven't done this in a year. But it's only 8:30. Yeah,
Only.
there's not that much more left on this ordinance. So.
Yep.
So again, I think this is a hot topic issue. We knew it was gonna be similar to
Yes.
the corner lot issue. So maybe go around the community, take a look, see your neighbor's backyard, see if you want to see an orange fence back there. And this is an overreach. I fully admit that. I don't want to have to enforce this. But we don't always deal with the highest common denominator. This is sometimes written for the lowest common denominator.
Let's have a rewrite, do the changes, and then we'll readdress it again next month.
So the permitting language is pretty standard. I actually took that right out of somebody else's ordinance.
Are you okay with that?
And then subpart O, appeals of a decision of the ZA under this ordinance shall be to the planning commission. which by majority vote shall serve as authority on all matters of interpretation related to walls and fences in the city. So it's a similar rule to what the ZBA would be looking at. But instead of it being the standard for variances, which is what the ZBA deals with, this would be an appeal of a decision to the ZA based on matters of interpretation. This is not something that is necessary. This is something that I wrote into the ordinance because I know the planning commission likes to retain as much power as humanly possible. But you could eliminate this and just say, forget it. If you want a variance, you want something different, go to the ZBA.
You just add another hour to your meeting.
I'll say, and you could be flooded with people saying, man, that jerk Mike didn't let me put up my 6-foot tall, barbed wire fence in the front yard.
It's true.
So,
Move out.
It's good to have a scapegoat.
thanks. So do you guys want to retain this authority or do you want to kick it to the ZBA?
I think this is just fine. This gives the zoning authority the power.
Well, it gives the planning commission the authority to interpret my act.
Right.
Mhm.
It lets us see what you've determined.
Well,
I kind of like that.
that's fine, but as Mr. Hall indicated, you could have 7 people a week saying, I didn't like what Mr. Womack did.
Yep.
Didn't you say that you haven't had any variance requests or something for this?
When we advertise this new law, you're going to see a flood of people trying to put up new fences.
What is
Yep.
okay. Like, give me numbers. Because what I like about it is it seems like it's more fair to the people, because then it's like a panel of people,
Well,
like making a decision based on like, instead of just one.
sure.
opinion.
The ZBA is also a panel of people.
Yeah.
The only difference is the ZBA is looking at variances. A variance is essentially what we were talking about earlier. My land is so strange, and there's something weird about my land that you shouldn't apply this rule to me, because if you applied the rule to me, it would inhibit my ability to use my property.
Which I'm
Financial
fine.
hardship or something to that.
What this is saying is, well, the city manager said I couldn't put up an 8-foot fence. And I think he's wrong about that. So they come to you, the board, and say, I want to put up an 8-foot fence. What's wrong with that?
Okay.
And your job at that point would be to say, where in the ordinance does it say you can put up an 8-foot fence?
Mhm.
And then you listen back.
That's your interpretation. When it says 6 foot, what it really means is 8 foot, is what they're asking you.
Yeah, because we wouldn't be there giving them special permission. You still got to follow.
Correct. Special permission would be a variance.
That would be a variance.
Then-
I think it should be the DUBA.
Delete O.
But,
I see.
I mean, this is to your point. You don't want a zoning administrator going rogue and saying, I'm sorry, I just don't like fences.
Well, it
But
does it.
you said
He's
was
still
a
got to
panel,
follow the
you
rules
said it
though.
would be the-
Yeah, and I'm saying you guys would be at least an intermediary step of interpretation versus the variance idea. Variances are special requests.
Mhm.
This is simply interpretation.
I think you're just
I mean, I
confusing
think
everybody.
yeah, I mean, that's your job as the zoning administrator, is to interpret.
All right.
it.
So I will eliminate that portion then and just send everybody to the ZBA.
That's what
Sounds
they're
good.
for.
Yeah, it's
Awesome.
Mr. Johnson, have you been holding your
Checks and
tongue on
balances.
anything in particular?
Well, I would offer a suggestion on letter N there, that where it says fences shall only be erected and placed upon the property of the property owner, and no fence may be erected on somebody else's property. That goes without saying. City shall not be responsible to determine the location nor enforce it. Well, if you're not gonna enforce it, don't say it. And I've been a zoning administrator or offered, when people come in and I say, here's the rules on fences, and they always say, does it have to be 1 foot inside my property line? And the answer is no. You just make sure you put it on your property. Your neighbor will tell you if it's on his property.
Yep.
We're not involved. We're just telling you the height, the materials, and the yards where you can put them. But in terms of putting in here, you can't put it on your neighbor's property, that's a civil matter. And let them fight it out. You don't want any part of that.
So the reason I put this in here is because under the current ordinance, me, I'm required to have a land survey for all fences. Most,
You wrote it in the ordinance.
well, no, the current ordinance. So land surveys cost money,
Mhm.
$300 to $500 probably for
Oh.
a residential lot.
Minimum.
Yeah. Most people don't have land surveys. Some of the newer lots do, but not most. So I have basically said, I'm not going to require that. Instead, I try to take a more pragmatic approach. Have you talked to your neighbor? Is there a dispute here? You know, do you know where your property line is? And for the most part, people have been fine, no issues. What I did not want to be, I think somewhere in this ordinance, I basically eliminated the requirement of that.
Okay.
I
was gonna
said the
say,
city
is-
manager, the zoning administrator can require a land survey, but he doesn't have to. This portion was saying, if we don't require the land survey, we're also not going to be responsible for when you put your fence in the wrong
The
place.
burden is on the fence builder.
Can't they also use a magnet detector? Is
That's
all-
them, you know, that's their burden to do that, not the city's. And if you put it too far in your neighbor, you gotta move it.
I agree with Mr. Johnson. It's a civil matter between them if you
Mhm.
put your fence on the wrong side of the property line.
Yeah, your permit form should have a line item that says city's now responsible for placement of fence.
Which I've been meaning to do, but I want to just change the law first. So
Okay.
Does,
There you go.
does all the properties have, metal, property markers in this city?
even if they did,
Majority of them do.
I think legally speaking, you, Johnny Citizen, cannot tell me where your property line is, legally speaking. You'd have to hire a certified land surveyor for that. And they'd have to come out, they'd have to find the stake, they'd have to run the line, and they'd have to stake it the entire way. That's the only real proper way to know where your property line is. Now, again, pragmatically speaking, if you present a land survey, it says 7 foot off the corner of your house. That's pretty reasonable, right? Or alternatively, your neighbor has a fence up. And you say to your neighbor, hey, is that the property line? He says, yes. That's pretty reasonable. But you can't just willy-nilly throw a fence 30 feet outside your yard and not know if it's on your property or the other guy's property.
Mr. Johnson, does the 7-year, rule, is that gone now?
What's 7-year
The
rule?
7-year grandfather rule? Is that over with?
First of all, that's not, in Michigan, the adverse possession is not 7 years. I think it's 20 years.
That might have been Arkansas then.
Yeah, there is adverse possession in Michigan. But again, that's a civil matter. Has nothing to do with the city.
No, I was just asking. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, my brother just had an adverse possession case.
Okay.
Looked it up recently. So yeah, if you put your fence up, and it, is 2 foot over the line, and it's been there for 30 years, you could go to court and have them declare that that extra 2 foot is now your property. It'll cost you $10,000.
It seems insane. Yeah.
So it's
Really?
Yep.
what, that somebody can do?
That somebody can take your property.
Well, but
Yeah.
that's the whole point of the law
Uh-huh.
is if, if you're living out in the woods and you got 40 acres between you and the next guy and your fence is 1 foot over the line, do you really expect people to know that?
Mhm.
I mean,
I know it just seems crazy that they could go to court and actually get your property because they put their fence on the wrong side.
well, it's not so much where the fence is located.
Mhm.
It's the concept of using that property
Yeah.
and acting to the world as though it were your property for 20 years.
Mhm.
If I'm gonna not use 1 foot of my property for 20 years, I clearly didn't need it. So that's the idea behind the law. Now, for what it's worth, cities are immune to this, so don't try to steal city property.
I was thinking more of the high school
Noted.
and the Metron.
Fence back.
Pretty sure though, well,
Start to push it
Oh, I
over.
could tell
School,
you a story
but
that would
Metron probably you could.
dispute that.
So, yeah, I'll take that under advisement and I'll look and see what language I can change there.
Okay.
I think that's the entire ordinance, so
Great.
think on those two main issues. We'll come back and chat about those again. And I'll try to finalize the ones that we all agreed to. Except for the ones Ashley commented on.
How did I know that was coming?
Okay,
Ready.
where are we at?
Moving along, item E in old business Cedar Springs marijuana caregiver zoning ordinance proposal.
Yeah, so,
More marijuana.
well, see, you guys have had it, but on the good side, council, I think, has been gnashing their teeth on this stuff. Okay, so in Michigan, there's 3 marijuana laws. You've got the 2008 law, the 2016 law, and the 2018 law. The city has already prohibited the 2016 law and has allowed the 2018 law. 2018 law is what you guys have been using to allow marijuana businesses to come into town.
No.
Unfortunately, we don't have a 2008 law in the city. 2008 allows these people called caregivers to essentially grow medicine for their patients. Now, the reason we didn't have a law is because from 2008 to 2020, the Michigan court system was battling it out, trying to figure out what the law actually said. So it wasn't until, I think, December of 2020 that we actually got a good court ruling. And for the city's purposes, what the ruling basically says is that, yes, we can enforce certain limitations on caregiver operations. Okay. We can't prohibit them, but we can require that they do certain things. So the way the law has been written is that we essentially require them to maintain odor control, which is a huge thing, right, for marijuana. And we allow them to put it into 2 specific locations. You can grow caregiver marijuana in your home, at your primary residence, not in your garage, in your home. Or you could rent space in an unused industrial building in an industrial zone district. So with that being said, hopefully you all read this and it'd be nice to have any comments. Other than that, we're going to be looking for a recommendation. We have to hold a public hearing. We'll be holding a public hearing at your next meeting, and then we'll be looking for a recommendation for approval to the city council.
2 public hearings.
I have a quick question.
Yep.
So for the industrial rent,
Yep.
would that building then have to request a special land use permit to rent out to a marijuana grower?
No, not under this ordinance. And you got to keep in mind something, sometimes law reflects reality. We actually found one of these operations in an industrial building in the city. And so I think what the city council is doing is they're saying it already exists. It's not hurting anybody. Nobody knows it's there. Why not allow an industrial building to make a little scratch on the side?
And these are, yeah, sorry.
Most cities that have this ordinance only allow it in your single family home. So the industrial thing is a specific thing that we're doing here because we found one.
More than you know.
And this is only for people with caregiver cards from
Right,
their
so-
patients.
Those
This ain't
people have-
personal.
Yeah, well,
If they have their card, they can grow it for themselves if they have a medical marijuana card.
yep. So under 2008 law, you can grow up to, I think it's 72 plants altogether. Under the 2018 law, you can, as Johnny says, and without a medical card, grow, I think, 12 plants.
Recreational, yeah.
So it's one of those silly things that, why are we doing this? Well,
Yeah.
because sometimes you just got to control people.
Yep. So you guys don't allow the recreational grow though, correct? The 12?
So we don't have any control over that.
Oh, gotcha.
Under the state law, anybody anywhere can grow
Yeah.
12
Grow
plants.
your own.
You just gotta follow the state law
Correct.
about the having it fenced in, the enclosures. Yeah.
Commercial side.
And we are aware of some people who are growing it in the community, so.
Can we use chicken wire as the enclosure?
Only
Yeah.
if it's hot pink.
Okay,
You cannot, because one of the requirements is that you cannot view the marijuana from a
I
public.
know, I'm just,
Right.
Now, that being said, the person I'm thinking in particular was using a chain link fence,
yeah.
and he put a polyethylene screen on it,
Oh,
so,
We got him.
So
Got
two
'em.
birds, one stone.
yes. So I guess any thoughts, questions, concerns, otherwise we'll set a public hearing.
No.
no questions on that one.
All right, so now we are in new business.
Business
We're in
B,
B, the parking ordinance review.
Yeah, so I'm starting to run out of steam here. I'm not sure how you guys are doing.
I would,
It's only 8:53, but
We're just letting you talk.
So, I think,
Who's been talking?
hopefully I did this for the Arby's one. I did run through each of these ordinances to tell you if we were using this ordinance, here's what the requirement would be.
I could.
But I mean, this stuff is complicated. One of the most important things that you're gonna take out of this is by looking at their other ordinances, ours is not like abnormal. The numbers are different, some are better, some are worse, but it's not like we're totally crazy out in left field. I don't want to get into the specifics today. It's way too much effort.
I move that we table this till next month.
I'll second that.
Discussion.
Oh, discussion. I keep forgetting.
So if I could, just for 2 seconds. So I'd like to do two things. First, I would like to look and compare our most used parking standards, drive-through restaurants, general retail, that kind of thing. See who has the lowest requirements and then consider
I
adopting.
mean, this thing is huge.
Yeah, so that would be the easy way to kind of move forward with the most used sections. The second thing would be, and you know, this is what I do in my office at 8 PM. I just started reading what do other communities do? Because one of the huge movements in planning and zoning, as I'm sure Mr. Johnson will tell me, is that these minimum requirements are a holdover from way back, you know, and a lot of communities are moving towards eliminating those minimum requirements. For the most part, if you end up a business, you know how many parking spaces you need. And we can generally trust those businesses to do the right thing.
Mhm.
But we could also bend it to our will and our need. So I can't remember if it was in my notes or if it was in an email, but one of the most interesting things I saw was, okay, this type of use requires 50 parking spaces. But if you put a bike rack in, we'll give you a 10% reduction. So now you only need 45. If you put in an additional ADA spot, we'll give you a 10% reduction. So now you only need 40. And so you can come up with these things of how do we force them to improve the site to make it more pedestrian friendly, more bike friendly, or aesthetically pleasing. You put in another parking island that has trees in it, we'll give you a 10% reduction in your parking requirements.
I love that.
It's an interesting idea.
Yeah.
It's going to require a lot more discussion.
And I agree with you. You got to trust the business. They're not going to build a business in town or anywhere and say, we only need 3 spots.
Well,
You
so
know.
counterpoint to that is the most recent one with Jimmy John's.
Yeah.
My overarching fear there is, okay, they say they got 20 parking spaces or whatever. They know they're going to have 50 people there every day at lunch. And where are those other 30 people going to go?
The family farm and home.
Park a family farm and home.
That's always empty
Is
anyways.
family farm and home obligated to have parking for your business?
No. Will they ever say something?
Yes.
You know, yeah.
Yes, they will. So there are situations where they won't act in their best interest, but if they have sufficient parking, maybe we go to a model of deferred parking, which we've used before, where we say, you know what, you think you only need 20 parking spaces? Great, you only need 20. Our parking ordinance says 50. You got to show where 30 additional parking spots would go in the future. So that's all the discussion I got. If you guys want to vote or to table.
I do think that you were correct in saying that Greenville is out of their mind.
I don't know if I interpreted that correctly, but that's how I read it.
That is, when I read that in your notes, I was like, I had to read that twice because that seemed awfully.
Yeah, I can't remember the number. I think it was like 131
131.
spots.
Yeah, one space for every 25 square feet, and I was just like, what?
Wow.
Greenville drive-through restaurant. And
Yeah.
maybe they're mixing up GFA and UFA. Because that would make a lot more sense if it was full floor area, but the customer space. But that's not how it read. So anyways,
All right, so we want to table this for the next meeting.
all those in favor?
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, we shall table that for the next meeting.
It would be great to get through the fence part before we get into the parking spot.
Whew.
You guys are a working board, if you haven't figured that out by now.
I thought he was making a joke. Okay.
No, I was like serious.
Well, no, I thought you were making a joke to like go through the fence.
Oh,
To get through the parking lot. That's
You
what I was,
always
I
think
was.
He's making puns and he's not.
well, because we joke around.
He's
a lot.
not that clever.
He cracks me up because it always takes me so long to understand it and then it's so funny.
Okay, we are on to open discussion for issues not on the agenda. Correspondence for the White Pine Trail overlay.
We just try to keep you guys informed about where some of the stuff you guys have worked on is at. You guys already recommended that to the city council. They're gonna take it up here next week. And of course, the 2021 meeting calendar, which has the Zoom information on it. And I'm sure very shortly you'll be seeing next year's regular proposed schedule.
Up here.
Is it?
Yep, it's in our packet.
No, that's 2021.
Okay, Jared,
Yeah.
it doesn't concern you, I guess.
Nope, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
You're absolutely right.
Anything past November, he doesn't care.
He
I'm
forgot for a
done.
second. He almost wanted to stay.
You got it down to the minute.
Meeting.
All right, staff comments, city manager.
So while we have Jerry until November 2nd, unfortunately, we have Mr. Johnson until October 5th.
I don't know why he doesn't just stay the rest of the year.
So he's told me that he's only dumping cedar. He's keeping every other city he's working for. And
That's not true.
he's got 20 more years of service to some of those communities. So
Wow.
I'm feeling a little hurt by that.
Right?
You should.
He told me that his wife wants me to stop by just to chat with her. That's a true statement.
Is that to keep him on?
Assuming I'm there as well.
No, his wife likes me. I stop by and chat and she's a chatter, so. Nope, I think it's a fair statement that we'll miss Mr. Johnson. He's put a lot of good work into this board.
Yes.
Mhm.
We've moved forward a lot in the last several years.
Yes.
And he's taught me a lot. This is not something I was trained to do. There's a lot of stuff that he's tricks of the trade, we'll call it that. So
We can tell.
I appreciate the effort and I'm sure he'll be giving out his home address for you all to stop by.
Christmas cards are welcome.
Or maybe just like a cell phone so we can call and ask questions. Say, is Mike right about this?
Now remember.
Yeah. That would be great.
Now remember, Mr. Johnson, we are still doing Zoom, so we expect to see you up there so we can bounce ideas off of you.
Called consultancy.
Yeah, I'll say,
It's like, oh, what?
he'll have a credit card reader ready to go.
Yeah,
That's what you can charge quadruple when you're a consultant, right?
Yep, that's. right.
there's a fee per question.
How many meetings have you sat through?
Thousands.
I think making them attend meetings via Zoom is just torture and
Yeah,
prohibited
that's
by the 8th Amendment at this point.
Any comments from beautiful lady in the corner, our city clerk? Nothing, okay. Planning commission members. The city council representative. Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson, for all your guidance and helping us through the changes and modifications that we've made within the last 8 years. Help bring businesses to our community a little more smoothly and streamlined. You've made a very good difference, a very big difference in teaching and guiding us, you know. Like one of my past teachers was, when we pass an ordinance, what are we trying to fix? Mr. Merlincoln, I think he was a relative of yours.
I don't always claim him, but yes.
Yes, you know, what are we trying to fix with an ordinance? And that's where you always look. We aren't gonna make them perfect, no way, shape or form, but we can do the best we can on them. And then we can modify them down the road when they don't work. So be mindful of that. You know, my last meeting will probably be the 9th of November.
We got you one more month then, right?
Yes, unfortunately, but it's been great working with all you folks. So
I still say that this is the most important board within the city because you folks are the ones that shape and guide the direction of this community on what it looks like and what businesses come to this town and how they will present themselves. So good work, good job. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time, Jerry.
Mr. Planning Consultant, do you have a report for us or?
Well, I would like to say two things. One of my former bosses always told me, don't bring me problems, bring me solutions. So I tried to bring you solutions as best I could, working with Mike and Rebecca to help facilitate your job as planning commissioners. I think you do a good job. It's been kind of fun and rewarding to watch you work through challenging issues and make good decisions. And I think you make those decisions because you all have the best interests of the city at heart. I think that's why you're so it's been rewarding to watch that and appreciate your hard work. The other thing that I wanted to bring up, and Mike mentioned my wife, I like to refer to her as my first wife. After 42 years, she's still my first wife. But she wanted you all to know that despite the notoriety that I have up here, and it's very small, she was the first one here to have some notoriety as a star of the Glass Menagerie at the Kent Theater back in 1977.
That's cool.
She wanted me to bring this up to you and show you that you might have been here then. So that would be her.
I was 5.
So she had,
Norman, oh yeah.
she had the billboards around town back in 77.
Wow,
That is fascinating.
And that's her right there.
that is pretty cool.
So we have this at our house. That's her. Not in.
Tim, how
Kent
does
Theater
a,
was
cool.
very active then, or still
awesome.
is.
Tim, how does a 28-year-old acting in 1977? How is a 28-year-old woman acting in 1977? No, I mean a 28-year-old woman now.
I'll tell her that and she'll appreciate that. So, yeah. So she was more famous up here. Before I was.
That's awesome.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that bottom name rings such a bell. I'm trying to figure out who Jerry Quigley is. Don't that name ring a bell to you?
Yeah, there was a Quigley's and then like the Normans.
Yeah. It's like I know who that Jerry is. I just can't put. That's who it was. There you go. He was was he not the coach up there too?
I think so.
Yeah,
He was the football coach up there, I believe, for
Yeah.
a long time.
if that is everything, I guess we are adjourned at 9:06 PM.
Good.
And we shall see each other again November 9th. Thank you for helping me.